Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So we've got a decent amount of news to cover here. None of it the big news that you're probably expecting, but I will cover what sort of did or rather didn't happen at New York Comic Con in terms of the Avatar panel. It's now, I suppose, roughly an hour since the panel came to an end, give or take. And as expected, it was just a podcast panel. It was a live recording of a podcast. The focus of the panel seemed to be more just around the interaction of the fact that they were doing it as a panel. They were in a room filled with fans, and it was about the atmosphere and just dynamic of the room, more so than I got the sense for any particular topic that was talked about or anything like that. So it very much seemed more based around fan interaction. No attempt really for news to come out. It was just Janet, Dante, and D. Bradley Baker. So we knew D. Bradley Baker was going to be there. No Johnny Young Bosch, so I'm guessing that was just a mistake on the New York Comic Con website saying that he was part of this panel when he actually wasn't. In terms of coverage, I thought it was kind of interesting. This Twitter account, the Geekiary, is probably the only account that I actually saw cover this event like at all. I think a few other people posted like some images and stuff like that, but in terms of live tweeting it, this was the only thing that I could actually see. And the live tweeting it is a pretty common occurrence based on previous years, but it was just interesting that I think there was probably just the sense going in here that in no way was there going to be news here. Mike and Brian were not there. You had none of the people involved in Dark Horse Comics, so what are they going to talk about? And you can see here running down what actually happened here. It's like, I found this one interesting. You know, I feel like they continually underestimate the fandom. A massive crowd outside and the room is not big enough. So way more people wanted to get into this panel than were actually allowed in. And I think that's because they didn't give this one of the like main event rooms, especially like not one of the rooms that had the like live stream going on. Don't have a clue what the situation was with regards to that, about like if you had to pay to watch it or if there was a free stream. I had a look, but I didn't put in a ton of time to try and search for it. And at the very least wasn't a simple process to just like, here's the link to it or anything like that. It was a bit all over the place, honestly. But look, I guess this will go up as a podcast on the feed, maybe, and we'll see what happens when it actually comes out. Other than that, like, it just seems like a lot of the sort of preamble that they tend to do on the podcast before they get into the topics, it felt like, I get the impression that's what the whole podcast was this time. That if you were there in person, it was probably cool because of the atmosphere, but if you were actually wanted some sort of discussion on the podcast, I didn't get a sense that that's what this was. You can see here going through these tweets that, you know, it's just pretty standard stuff, standard voice actor, you know, back and forth dynamics. D. Bradley Baker, D says it's heartwarming to see how much the fandom still cares about the universe, and it's like, yeah, of course, the Avatar fandom has never left. The last, I suppose 2 years have seen like a resurgence in the fandom, but it was already still pretty much there, and now there's just a kind of lingering hype that I hope they can keep and capitalize on, because I don't think this necessarily did that. Perhaps for the people who were there in person it did, but at home I just get the sense that this was a complete non-event. Because again, I'm more about give me the news rather than anything else, and so this just voice actor chit chat is not really what I'm about, I suppose. Yeah, some stuff about animals, D. Bradley Baker doing some animal impressions, so on. This is probably the key thing in terms of if you want to know if anything important was said. None of them know what's coming out of Avatar Studios. They all hope they'll be involved, of course, but mostly they're happy that there will be more from the universe. And that's super telling. The official podcast, 2 co-hosts who are main characters from both series, are just fans waiting like us for Avatar Studios news. That really puts into perspective, you know, the podcast and what we should and should not expect from it. Maybe they'll change things up when more news, we're closer to these projects, and maybe they will be a place where we get news from. But right now, they're kept in the dark, we're kept in the dark, and that needs to change, I think, sooner rather than later. I get it that there's probably nothing particularly detailed to say right now, but you've got to communicate. It's been 8 months since the announcement about Avatar Studios. Is there really nothing you can say about what Avatar Studios is doing right now? That's what I find hard to understand. Again, the more you communicate, the better you get across sort of the situation that you're in, rather than keeping us in the dark where we're sort of like, are we waiting for something like next year, the year after, or are we like 2-3 years off? Like, you need to make this stuff clear and not have it just be these random comments that like are almost taken out of context because Brian appeared on this like 2.5-hour podcast and he mentioned like this tiny little thing about at the end that in a podcast otherwise not about Avatar, and you get all these weird stuff going on. And then you can see it's just pretty much random comments about Avatar, but you know, it is what it is, and that's really it. I'm sure they maybe did some fan Q&A at the end, but again, they're just 3 voice actors. They're not going to have that many insightful responses to stuff, and it's probably just the usual questions you expect from conventions, honestly. So yeah, the podcast was exactly what they said it would be, and it's probably exactly what I expected it to be, which is none of what I read there felt any different than panels we have had in previous years. The only difference is that because it wasn't directly a Dark Horse or an Abrams Books panel, you didn't have anyone involved in the comics. And arguably you could say that that made this panel less interesting because it was just voice actors. So that's interesting. To me, is there any difference this year compared to like newer Comic-Con panels from previous years? I honestly don't really think so. Other than, like, I suppose Janet Varney and Dante Basco are more forward as sort of hosts, Avatar hosts now, but because they have no insight, really, because they're barely insiders, I suppose, what's going on? I don't know. What we're waiting for, and we still haven't got anything about, is of course this. On the live reading for Suki Alone, on the Dark Horse Twitch, they did say comic announcements, none today, but some are coming very, very soon. Now, they obviously said this about 2 and a bit weeks ago. So, like, very, very soon, what does that mean? I'd say 2-3 weeks, a month at most, is very, very soon. So, I don't know. I haven't seen anything yet. I'm just hopeful and hoping that something comes sooner rather than later, because we need an announcement, because getting into the next piece of news, it basically delays here. Avatar The Last Airbender Chibis Volume 1, Aang's Unfreezing Day, now on sale 22nd of March 2022. This book has been delayed by another month and a half. This is particularly frustrating just because even though I wasn't overly excited for this book, because again, we don't know how canon or not it actually is, being a chibi comic, it is the only Dark Horse book that actually has new content that is actually sort of confirmed coming out and has a date, given that Beast of the Four Nations is now postponed indefinitely until it gets a proper announcement. This is the only thing they really have on their upcoming schedule. And it's been delayed again by about a month and a half. I think February 8th was the last date. Now it's 22nd of March. That's a pretty heavy release date change, given that this is a book that has already been very heavily delayed. This book, I believe, was initially announced for like June 2020 or maybe July 2020. And again, it was one of those books where on the day it was announced, basically, it got a release date change, and then it got a really quick date change after that, and then it was changed to what it was now, 2022, in or around all the February books. But now it's a month off from that, and it just means that there's a huge gap between Suki Alone, which is the last main book that we got, 27th of July, all the way up to March 2022. And even though we are expecting announcements for new Korra comics and new Avatar comics and a new novel, at this stage, they are not going to get announced until the next couple of weeks. And when they do get announced, they are going to have dates that are second half of the year at the very least. Because this is the first book that really goes into like March for Dark Horse. And it's been a few months since they announced all these books for February. So new books for Dark Horse will be June, July at the earliest, if not into August at this stage. So there's going to be pretty much, I'd say, it really looks like about a year between the last proper comic and the next comic, unless something big happens. It's pretty frustrating, but hopefully this is the finalized date. I get it, you know, COVID, everything has date changes and so on, but this one already had so many date changes. It just is really frustrating to see that happen. The next one is also release date changes, and I don't think anything is ever going to beat these books or how heavy these delays are. Both the Rise of Kyoshi and the Shadow of Kyoshi trade paperback editions have been pushed back from May 2022 to March 2024. That is correct, 2024. And if we go to the Abrams Books website, you can see that this is in fact correct. Publication date March 12th, 2024. And it's the same with Shadow of Kyoshi as well. And it's the paperback. I don't know. I don't get it. Like, that's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a book announced like 3 years basically in advance. Like, we're in 2021 now. I don't think I've ever seen a book or even many things just get announced with a date that is like +3 onto the end of the year. It's crazy, even though I suppose it's more like, you know, 2.5 years with the way it works out. It's still really far in advance. Now, this is not too big of a deal just because, one, it's only the paperback edition of a book that we already have, a book that is already getting sort of a reprint in the box set next month. It is the hardbacks again, but still, you have access to get the book in multiple formats already. This is just the cheaper paperback version, but it's of interest to some people. It's been announced for ages again. The Rise of Kyoshi paperback was initially scheduled to come out with, basically alongside the hardback release of the Shadow of Kyoshi, but it's been so heavily pushed back. Like, this book has basically been delayed by like 4 years nearly. Like three-quarter years, whatever way you want to put it. 4 years basically for this book. That's absolutely insane. So yeah, that's just a weird one. When I saw that, I was just like, 2024, absolutely unbelievable. Next, some kind of action figure news. When we got the, I suppose, official details about the Zuko and Ang, the 7-inch McFarlane figures, the Zuko said something interesting, that there was basically like an alternate version that you have a chance of getting, a chase version. Well, here is that chase version. As you can see, an eBay seller has it up here. The Platinum Chase Edition of Zuko is Zuko with bandage. This is referencing the Book 3 flashback from, I think, the Western Air Temple, where obviously Zuko is about to, you know, try his attempt to join the gang, and he reflects on, I suppose, the last time he was at the Western Air Temple searching for the Avatar, and it's a flashback to him in his Book 1 outfit, back from earlier, shortly after his banishment, where his scar is still sort of healing. So that's what this is referencing here. A little bit of a deep cut in terms of like how much on-screen time we get with Zuko looking like this. Admittedly, the gold version of this figure, where it's Zuko with the helmet, the kind of the full-on armor, that also only appears for a short amount of time. But this is a very specific Zuko. You can see the platinum sticker here. I wonder how rare this is actually going to be, but it's also like, if you have a chance of just ordering the normal Zuko to get this one, I actually wonder like how many people would actually like be a little annoyed maybe about getting this Zuko instead of the normal one, just because it is rather specific. Like, do you want your Zuko, who you associate the scar as a big part of the character, do you want that covered up in the figure that you get? Yes, it's worth money from a collector's point of view and stuff like that, but it's going to be an interesting one. I think it's a bit of a deep cut, certainly, but just it's interesting that it's out there, that we now know what this is, that there's the gold exclusive version, there's the normal version, and then there's this platinum version, which is a chase. The final piece of news is just to talk a little bit more about this. Now, when I did my last video on this, I think it was the day before it was apparently meant to go on sale. It never went on sale. So this is the new Book 3 Airbending Ang that's meant to be a New York Comic Con exclusive. The Avatar Instagram account, the official Avatar Instagram, revealed this and said that it was going to be on sale on the Funko website tomorrow. That day has since come and gone. It didn't go up for sale, and nothing has been said about this. This has not been, I suppose, officially revealed, because obviously it was taken down from the Avatar Instagram. Funko Europe hasn't mentioned it, and I don't think Funko America mentioned it either. So what's happened here? In general, New York Comic Con for Funko has been a little bit of a mess. Lots of complaints from Funko collectors about just the reveals happening last minute, no one really being prepared, both Funko and then the various sellers and places that have the exclusives really being prepared for it, because it is so last minute. Because the idea with these convention exclusives is that they're available at the convention or in stores during the time the convention is going on. That it's not a pre-order for an item that's coming out in a few months, like when they announce Funkos. This is exclusives that are available to purchase. They're right there now. They obviously did it online this time out, but the idea is meant to be the same, that like these are in stock and you're purchasing them to arrive within the next few days. The impression I got was that most of the stuff was basically a pre-order for like December. Basically, that's how sort of behind and delayed everything is. And especially because this was a Funko store exclusive for New York Comic Con, they didn't have this ready to go. And I think the way Funko typically work is that I don't think they do pre-orders on their website. They just, it's in stock now, join the queue and get it. So they didn't have that, and so they weren't ready to announce it, because they would have got some backlash otherwise. They still did, but at least they took it down before, I suppose, it super spread around the place. So just be aware that, like, I don't think anyone has missed out on this one yet. It'll get re-announced for when it's finally ready to go, and based on a lot of the other ones, I think people are speculating around December, but it could be earlier. I'm not really sure. Either way, I suppose for me in Europe, I'm waiting to see what is happening with Funko Europe. Hopefully, like the other Book 3 Ang, it's just a Funko Store Europe exclusive, and it will be relatively easy to get. But it is what it is. All these exclusives for Avatar Funkos, it's a bit crazy. I can't imagine people who actually collect a lot of different lines. It must be absolutely insane trying to get them all. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about here. I'd love to speculate about when I think we'll actually get news about comics, but given that it hasn't happened yet, sure, it could happen tomorrow, but I don't think Dark Horse are going to make an announcement on a Sunday. Would they wait until like the week after Comic-Con? I don't know, maybe, because people are still hyped after New York Comic-Con, but it's calmed down a little bit. Maybe it's a decent point to stem off from, but again, they said very, very soon. I haven't seen an announcement yet, apart from delays for other books. So something needs to happen sooner rather than later, because the panel, nothing happened. And it's looking more and more like we are probably going to go most of the next year without really finding out anything about Avatar Studios. So we're going to have to rely on this next year, other content to get us there. And when they're delaying stuff from February into March, and new books are not going to be announced until like close to this time next year, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. And especially with the idea that we were expecting a Avatar Legends role-playing game Kickstarter update, but that got delayed. They said they'd give an update this week, but they've pushed that update back until the middle of next week. Not sure why they did that, but we're expecting delays to happen with that Kickstarter, and that will push another thing out of February if that doesn't happen in February. So it's just tricky. It's frustrating at the moment to be an Avatar fan, just because all this merchandise is coming out, and it's cool because there's action figures here, Funko Pops there, pins of this, and in that sense, Avatar is kicking off like full on. But the content has crawled to a halt. Nothing going on at the moment in terms of new story content, and that's what I am kind of frustrated about. That Avatar Studios has given us this thing to look forward to in a couple of years, but it seems to have brought everything to a screeching halt. And already the release schedule for the comics was, in my mind, really, really slow. We don't need to go any slower. So it's such a weird situation, I think, at the moment to be an Avatar fan, especially like, you know, doing a like news focused channel like me, where I do really highlight like the reviews for new story content as being the main focus of my channel. I just feel like I have nothing to talk about like most of the week, unless we get little kind of news dumps like this, that we should be super excited and they should be able to build on this, but it's just not happening at the moment. And I hope, again, all we need is just one comic announcement to just get us back on track. Hopefully it happens sooner rather than later, because I feel like I'm just losing my mind over here. Oh, we'll get news here. No. And it's just, I can't remember the last time it was like, it felt this bad to just be like, where's the news? And again, I just look at the news or information that comes out of this Comic-Con panel, and I'm like, I struggle to believe that Avatar Studios was announced in February, and this, the first big convention back in person, this is all you could do? I don't get it. Like, in terms of just building hype and stuff like that, it just feels like they're at the same time trying to build hype and keep Avatar in everyone's minds, but also saying like, oh, don't think about the new stuff. Think about the old stuff. And it's like, we have been since Korra ended. Like, it's been 7 years already. So I'm just gonna end the video there. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. New York Comic Con, did you see anything at the panel or the convention? Some of the release date changes. The next new piece of content's also been delayed. Yoshi Paperbacks 2024. The Platinum Edition Zuko. Whatever's going on with this Ang Funko Pop. What are your thoughts on everything that I discussed in this video? But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.